understanding the journey ahead. Before we dive in, it's worth knowing how James Clear has structured Atomic Habits. The book is built around 4 laws of behavior change, principles that make or break every habit you have. Each law contains 3 to 4 chapters, and together they form a step-by-step framework for building good habits and breaking bad ones. But before we reach those laws, James starts with a foundation. 3 opening chapters called the fundamentals. These set the stage, explaining why small changes matter, how habits shape your identity, and why systems are more powerful than goals. Think of this structure as a map. First, we learn the terrain, then we walk through it, one law at a time, until we reach the most advanced strategies for lasting change. With that map in mind, let's open the first chapter and see how one moment on a high school baseball field changed the course of James Clear's life and started the ideas behind this book. Chapter 1. The Surprising Power of Atomic Habits. It was just another afternoon in high school baseball practice until it wasn't. James Clear stepped up to the plate. The pitcher wound up. The ball rocketed toward him, and in an instant, everything went black. The pitch had struck him squarely between the eyes. The crack of impact was followed by chaos. Teammates rushing, coaches shouting, the world tilting into a blur. In the hospital, doctors discovered he had a fractured skull, shattered nose, and swollen brain. The injury left him unable to breathe through his nose for weeks. He had double vision, constant headaches, and his once promising baseball career seemed finished before it had even begun. For months, simple tasks were a struggle. He missed the end of his sophomore year, fell behind in school, and faced a quiet but crushing truth. The life he thought he was building had collapsed. There was no dramatic Hollywood comeback, no overnight triumph, just a slow, frustrating process of putting the pieces back together. But here's where the seeds of Atomic Habits were planted. Unable to overhaul his life in one sweeping move, James focused on the smallest actions he could control. He started with going to bed early, keeping his room tidy, lifting light weights, making his bed in the morning, eating a little better. These changes were almost laughably small, too small to impress anyone. But slowly they stacked. He began to notice progress. His grades improved, his body grew stronger, his mind sharper. By his senior year, he made the baseball team again, not as a star, but as a contributor. In college, he kept refining his habits, and eventually, those micro-adjustments brought him national recognition as one of the top male athletes at his university. The lesson? Change doesn't come from grand gestures. It comes from the compound effect of thousands of small decisions, repeated day after day. Like interest in a bank account, habits multiply their value over time. Good habits build you up, bad habits drag you down, and the difference between the two often starts so small it's invisible. Think of it this way. If you can get just 1% better each day, you won't be slightly better after a year. You'll be 37 times better. The math works both ways. 1% worse each day, and you drift toward decay just as relentlessly. This is why small changes matter. Not because they make an immediate splash, but because they set the trajectory of your life. We tend to overestimate the importance of single defining moments and underestimate the value of daily improvement. But as James learned, it's not about setting heroic goals. It's about building systems that make progress inevitable. In the next chapter, we'll uncover the real reason habits shape your identity and why changing who you are starts with changing what you do. Chapter 2. How your habits shape your identity and vice versa. If you want to change your life, you have to change your habits. That's the advice most of us have heard. But James Clear flips the idea around. If you want to change your habits, you have to change your identity. It sounds almost backwards, but think about it. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you believe you are. If you run 3 times a week, you're casting votes for I am a runner. If you choose fresh food over fast food, you're casting votes for I am a healthy person. And the opposite is just as true. Skipping workouts, procrastinating, or staying up too late are votes for a different kind of identity. James tells the story of a friend who quit smoking. When offered a cigarette, instead of saying, "No thanks, I'm trying to quit," he said, "No thanks, I'm not a smoker." It's a subtle shift, but a powerful one. The first statement is about behavior. The second is about identity. Behavior can be fragile when it's just something you're trying. Identity? That's solid. You protect it. You live up to it. Here's the trap many of us fall into. We focus on outcomes, the number on the scale, the size of our bank account, the trophy at the finish line. But outcomes are the lagging measure of habits. Your bank balance is the lagging measure of your financial habits. Your weight is the lagging measure of your eating and exercise habits. Your knowledge is the lagging measure of your learning habits. When we obsess over outcomes, we miss the root, our systems, and deeper still, our sense of self. James breaks this down into 3 layers of change. Outcomes, what you get. Processes, what you do. Identity, what you believe. Most people start from the outside in. I want to lose weight, so I'll work out. But lasting change comes when you work from the inside out. I'm the kind of person who doesn't miss workouts. The goal isn't to read a book, it's to become a reader. Not to run a marathon, but to become a runner. An identity isn't built overnight. It's forged through small wins, over and over, until your brain begins to trust the new story you're telling it. Every time you follow through on a habit, you're reinforcing that story. You're becoming that person. James learned this firsthand. After his injury, he didn't think of himself as an athlete making a comeback. He became the kind of person who lived with discipline day in and day out, and his identity as an athlete grew naturally from that. So if you're struggling to stick with a habit, maybe it's not willpower you lack. Maybe it's clarity about who you want to be. Decide the type of person you want to become. Then prove it to yourself in small ways, again and again, until the identity sticks. In the next chapter, James will reveal why focusing on systems rather than goals is the key to consistent progress, and how the wrong kind of goal can actually sabotage your success. Chapter 3. How to build better habits in 4 simple steps. By now, we've seen that habits are more than routines. They're the building blocks of your identity. But how exactly do they form? Why do some stick effortlessly while others vanish the moment life gets busy? James Clear takes us back to the 1890s, to the laboratories of Harvard University, where psychologist Edward Thorndike was studying animal behavior. In one experiment, Thorndike placed cats inside puzzle boxes. The cats had to figure out how to escape by pulling a lever or pressing a button. At first, they scratched, meowed, and pawed at the walls in frustration. But eventually, one cat would stumble upon the solution, pull the lever, and the door would open. Thorndike measured how long it took each cat to escape. On the first tries, it could take minutes. But with repetition, escape times dropped sharply. The cats learned which actions led to freedom and food, and they began repeating those actions more quickly. In short, they built a habit. From this and decades of research since, James identifies a simple truth. Every habit follows the same 4-step pattern. Whether it's brushing your teeth, checking your phone, or going for a run, the cycle is the same. 1. Cue, a trigger that tells your brain to start the behavior. 2. Craving, the motivational force that drives you to act. 3. Response, the actual habit or action you perform. 4. Reward, the benefit you get from doing it, which teaches your brain to repeat the cycle. Picture it. You walk into the kitchen in the morning, cue, smell freshly brewed coffee, craving, pour yourself a cup, response, and feel the warm, caffeinated satisfaction, reward. Your brain now wants to repeat that loop tomorrow and the next day without you having to think about it. Understanding this loop is the first step to mastering your habits. Without a cue, there's no trigger. Without craving, there's no reason to act. Without response, there's nothing to reward. And without a reward, your brain has no reason to store the behavior for the future. James warns that the same loop drives bad habits too. A notification chime, cue, makes you feel curious or distracted, craving. You grab your phone, response, and you see a funny video or message, reward. That little hit of dopamine reinforces the cycle. And before long, you're checking your phone every few minutes without even noticing. This is why habits can be so stubborn. They're not just conscious choices, they're hardwired loops designed to save your brain energy by running on autopilot. Once a loop is established, your brain will follow it again and again, unless you deliberately break or redesign it. And here's where the rest of Atomic Habits comes in. The 4 laws of behavior change. Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying are built directly on these 4 steps. Each law corresponds to one part of the loop, giving you a framework to either strengthen good habits or dismantle bad ones. James puts it simply, habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. But compound interest works only if the loop stays intact, repeating over time. Once you know the 4 steps, you can start to see the invisible architecture behind every habit you have, and more importantly, how to change it. In the next section, we'll open the first law, make it obvious, and learn how to bring hidden habits into the light so you can finally take control of them. The first law, make it obvious. The first step in mastering any habit is awareness. Most of us live on autopilot, reacting to cues in our environment without even realizing they're there. That's the danger and also the opportunity. Because when you can see the invisible triggers driving your behavior, you can begin to take control. The first law, make it obvious, is about shining a light on those cues. It's about taking the hidden forces of habit formation and bringing them into plain sight so you can design your surroundings to work for you, not against you. In the next few chapters, James will show how to spot the habits you already have, uncover the cues behind them, and use the power of your environment to make good habits unavoidable and bad habits harder to start. Chapter 4. The Man Who Didn't Look Right. It was an ordinary day in a hospital when a nurse noticed something strange. Her patient's skin looked slightly off, pale, with a faint bluish tint. His breathing was a bit shallow. To an untrained eye, he looked fine. But the nurse couldn't shake a feeling. Something's wrong. She called for a doctor, who ordered tests. Moments later, they discovered the man was on the verge of cardiac arrest. That quick intuition, a single glance that didn't look right, saved his life. James Clear uses this story to make a point. Our brains are constantly scanning our environment, picking up cues, and predicting what will happen next. Over time, these cues become automatic triggers for action, whether it's a nurse detecting danger or you reaching for your phone when it buzzes. The challenge is that many of our bad habits are triggered by cues we barely notice. You walk into the living room, see the remote, and suddenly you're on the couch. You open the fridge, see a slice of cake, and suddenly you're eating it. These cues are so embedded in our environment that we respond without thinking. The first step to breaking free is learning to see them. James introduces the habit scorecard, a simple exercise where you list your daily habits, one by one, and mark each as positive, negative, or neutral. Wake up, neutral. Check phone, negative. Drink a glass of water, positive. By writing them down, you make the invisible visible. You begin to see patterns and the cues that start them. But awareness isn't enough. You also need to design your environment so good cues are front and center. Want to read more? Leave a book on your pillow. Want to eat healthier? Put fruit in a bowl on the counter and move junk food out of sight. Want to practice guitar? Keep it on a stand in the middle of the room instead of tucked away in a closet. Our habits are shaped far more by our surroundings than by our willpower. In fact, James argues that environment is the invisible hand guiding our behavior. When you control the cues around you, you control the actions that follow. So if you want to build a habit, make the cue obvious. And if you want to break one, do the opposite. Remove or hide the cue. No cue, no craving. In the next chapter, James will show how this principle could be taken even further by using a simple formula to link new habits to ones you already have, creating a chain that grows stronger every day. Chapter 5. The best way to start a new habit. There's a reason so many New Year's resolutions fizzle out by February. It's not that people lack motivation on January 1st. It's that motivation alone can't carry a habit when life gets messy. James Clear offers a better way. Implementation intentions. A simple formula that moves habits from vague wishes to clear, actionable steps. It works like this. Make a clear plan by filling in this sentence. I will. Your chosen action. At. The exact time. In. The exact place. For example, I will meditate for 1 minute at 7 in the morning in my living room. Instead of, I'll work out more, it becomes, I will do 20 push-ups after I brush my teeth in the bathroom. The difference is clarity. Vague intentions rely on willpower. Clear plans rely on structure. And structure wins when motivation fades. James explains that one of the most reliable triggers for building a habit is habit stacking, linking a new habit to one you already do automatically. The formula here is after. Current habit. I will. New habit. Say you want to start flossing. After I brush my teeth, I will floss one tooth. One tooth sounds ridiculous, but it's not about doing it perfectly. It's about showing up consistently. Once you've flossed one, you're more likely to floss the rest. This approach works because it taps into existing cues already embedded in your daily routine. You don't have to create a whole new trigger from scratch. You borrow one your brain already recognizes. James shares examples. After I pour my morning coffee, I will write down one thing I'm grateful for. After I take off my work shoes, I will immediately change into workout clothes. After I sit down to dinner, I will put my phone in another room. Small, specific, anchored to something that's already a habit. That's the sweet spot. But here's the subtle magic. Habit stacking doesn't just create a trigger, it also creates momentum. Your brain begins to associate the end of one action with the start of another. Over time, that link becomes automatic. You don't think about starting the new habit, you just do it. Implementation intentions and habit stacking work because they remove ambiguity. You're no longer waiting for the right time to act. The time and place are built into your day. And when life inevitably throws distractions your way, you can still fall back on the plan. The key takeaway: don't just set a goal. Design the exact moment it will happen. Decide when and where, and tie it to something you already do. That's how you turn good intentions into automatic actions. In the next chapter, James will reveal one of the most underestimated drivers of our habits, something we all crave deeply, often without realizing it, and how it can be used to make good habits practically irresistible. Chapter 6. Motivation is overrated. Environment often matters more. We like to think we're in control of our actions, that our habits are the result of discipline and willpower. But James Clear shows us a different truth. Much of what we do is shaped by the environment around us, often without us even realizing it. Think about it. You can have every intention to eat healthy, but if the cookies are in plain sight on the counter, your chances of resisting them drop. You might swear you'll read more, but if the TV remote is right in front of you, that screen will win almost every time. Our surroundings constantly send cues, small visual and sensory triggers, that nudge us towards certain behaviors. The more obvious the cue, the more likely the action will follow. James tells the story of a college cafeteria that wanted to encourage students to drink more water instead of soda. They didn't post signs or launch a motivational campaign. They simply placed water bottles in more visible, convenient spots throughout the cafeteria and tucked soda into less prominent locations. Without any lectures about health, soda sales dropped and water sales rose dramatically. The students' environment changed, and so did their behavior. This works both ways. If your environment is cluttered with triggers for bad habits, those habits will keep happening. If it's designed to highlight triggers for good habits, those habits will take root. The principle here is simple. Design beats discipline. Rather than trying to fight temptation head-on, it's far more effective to remove the cues for bad habits and make cues for good habits obvious and easy to access. James uses this strategy in his own life. If he wants to play guitar more, he leaves it out on a stand in the middle of the room. If he wants to eat healthier, he puts fresh fruit in a large, visible bowl on the kitchen counter. If he wants to watch less TV, he takes the batteries out of the remote and puts them in a drawer. Small friction points that make the bad habit less automatic. The beauty of environment design is that it works quietly. You don't have to constantly try harder. The surroundings do the heavy lifting. You simply set up the space so the easiest choice is the right one. And if you think this is just about objects in your home, think again. The environment also includes the people you spend time with, the digital spaces you inhabit, and the routines that frame your day. Every one of these is either nudging you toward your desired identity or away from it. Here's the challenge James leaves us with. Stop relying on self-control as your first line of defense. Instead, make the desired habit the path of least resistance. Put the tools for success in your line of sight and hide the triggers for distraction and decline. In the next chapter, James will reveal a subtle but powerful psychological bias, one that can make good habits almost irresistible when used well and nearly impossible to resist when used against you. Chapter 7. The Secret to Self-Control. Most of us have been taught that self-control is a matter of grit, that resisting temptation is a kind of moral muscle, and the stronger yours is, the better you'll be at avoiding bad habits. But James Clear challenges this idea. In reality, people who seem to have incredible self-control aren't necessarily better at resisting temptation. They're better at avoiding it in the first place. He illustrates this with a fascinating study from the 1970s involving soldiers in the Vietnam War. At one point, nearly 20% of U.S. soldiers were addicted to heroin. The military feared a wave of addiction would flood the country when these men returned home. But what happened next stunned the experts. Within a year of coming back, the vast majority, over 90%, stopped using heroin entirely. Why? It wasn't a sudden surge of discipline. It was a change in environment. In Vietnam, heroin was everywhere, cheap, accessible, and socially normalized. Back in the United States, the cues disappeared. The friends who used it were gone, the suppliers were gone, the locations where they used it were gone. Without those triggers, the craving evaporated for most soldiers. James uses this to underline a key truth. It's far easier to avoid temptation than to resist it. If a behavior is never triggered, it's almost as if the craving for it doesn't exist. Think about your own life. If you struggle with snacking at night, keeping cookies in the pantry is like keeping a loaded trap on the counter. If you want to watch less TV, keeping the remote on the coffee table is a silent invitation. If you want to waste less time online, leaving social media tabs open is like leaving candy on your desk. Self-control often fails not because we're weak, but because we're walking into battle unarmed, surrounded by enemies. The constant presence of a cue, even a tiny one, steadily erodes willpower until the bad habit wins. The real secret to self-control, then, is structure. Create an environment where temptation rarely appears, and you won't need heroic willpower to resist it. Remove the cues, and the habit weakens. James makes it clear, you don't need to be a person of iron discipline. You need to be a person of wise design. If you want to quit smoking, avoid places and people that trigger the habit. If you want to drink less, don't keep alcohol in the house. If you want to eat healthier, don't shop hungry, and don't bring junk food home. The inverse is also true. If you want a habit to flourish, make sure its cues are in plain sight. The people who appear to have amazing self-control are often the ones who've quietly removed temptations and filled their world with triggers for good habits instead. So maybe it's time to stop thinking of willpower as your main weapon. Willpower is like an emergency parachute, useful in a crisis, but not something you want to rely on every day. A better approach is to make the landing strip so clear, so free of obstacles, that you glide into the behavior you want without even noticing. With this, we come to the end of the first law: make it obvious. You now know how to shine a light on your habits, uncover the cues that trigger them, and design your environment so that good habits are visible and easy to start, while bad habits fade from view. In the next section, we'll move into the second law: make it attractive, and see how desire can be shaped so that the habits you want become the habits you crave. The second law: make it attractive. If the first law was about noticing habits, making the cues obvious, the second law is about making them appealing enough to follow. We are wired to seek pleasure and avoid pain. It's a survival mechanism written deep into our biology. When something feels rewarding, we're drawn toward it. When it feels unpleasant, we steer away. The more attractive a habit is, the more likely it will stick. But attraction isn't just about the habit itself. It's about how our brain interprets it. By reframing a habit, by pairing it with something enjoyable, or by surrounding ourselves with people who value it, we can turn even difficult behaviors into something we look forward to doing. In the next few chapters, James Clear will show us how to harness this principle, using craving as a tool, not an obstacle, so the habits we want become the ones we can't wait to repeat. Chapter 8: how to make a habit irresistible. Before you do any habit, good or bad, there's always a spark. Something catches your attention and makes you want to act. That spark is a craving. And James Clear reminds us that cravings are the engine of every habit. Without craving, there's no action. The challenge is that our brains are wired to respond most powerfully to certain kinds of rewards. And the modern world is an expert at hijacking this wiring. Junk food is engineered for maximum flavor. Social media is designed to drip feed us dopamine with every like, comment, and scroll. These things feel irresistible because they've been tuned to light up our brain's reward system. James tells the story of scientists studying dopamine, the chemical often associated with pleasure. They found something fascinating. Dopamine spikes not when we get the reward, but when we anticipate it. That means the craving, the feeling of "I want this," is often more powerful than the reward itself. This insight is the key to making good habits stick. If you can make the anticipation of a good habit enjoyable, you've already won half the battle. One way to do this is through temptation bundling, linking something you want to do with something you need to do. For example, only watch your favorite show while exercising on the treadmill. Only listen to your favorite podcast when cleaning the house. Only enjoy your best coffee when sitting down to write. By pairing a habit you're trying to build with something you already enjoy, you create a positive association. Suddenly, the new habit isn't a chore. It's a ticket to something you love. James also points out the role of culture in shaping our cravings. We tend to adopt the habits of the people we spend time with. If your friend values fitness, you'll likely exercise more. If they love reading, you'll probably read more. Our brains are wired for belonging. We crave behaviors that help us fit in. That means if you want to make a habit attractive, join a group where the habit is normal and admired. Here's the bigger truth. You can design the craving for a habit just as you can design the cue. By bundling pleasures, reframing how you see the habit, and surrounding yourself with people who live it out, you make the habit pull you toward it, instead of pushing yourself toward it. The takeaway? Stop fighting cravings, redirect them. Make the habit something you want to do, not just something you think you should do. The more you look forward to it, the less discipline you'll need to keep it alive. In the next chapter, James will show how one of the most ancient forces in human psychology, the pull of the tribe, can be a powerful ally in making habits stick. Chapter 9. The role of family and friends in shaping your habits. We like to think we make our own choices, but James Clear reminds us of something uncomfortable. Much of what we do is shaped by the people around us. Habits are contagious, and the closer the relationship, the stronger the influence. Humans are wired for connection. Thousands of years ago, survival depended on belonging to the tribe. Being accepted meant protection, food, and a chance to pass on your genes. Rejection often meant death. That ancient wiring hasn't disappeared. It just plays out in different ways. Today, our tribes might be our families, our coworkers, our gym buddies, or even the online communities we join. But the pull is just as strong. James points out that we are drawn to adopt the habits of three groups in particular. 1. The close ones, the people we spend the most time with. 2. The many, the larger group or culture we identify with. 3. The powerful, those we admire or look up to. When we live with people who eat healthy, we're more likely to eat healthy. If our coworkers take smoke breaks, we may start joining them, even if we've never smoked before. And if someone we respect has a habit, we're far more likely to adopt it ourselves, often without realizing why. James shares how this works in positive ways too. If you want to run more, join a running club. If you want to read more, join a book group. By embedding yourself in a culture where your desired behavior is the norm, the pull of belonging works in your favor. Instead of relying on discipline, you rely on the natural human urge to fit in. He tells the story of how, when he started weightlifting, his progress accelerated simply because he surrounded himself with people who took the gym seriously. Their dedication became the standard, and he naturally rose to meet it. There was no conscious decision to try harder. It happened because the social environment made certain behaviors expected. But the reverse is also true. If you want to break a bad habit, it's much harder if you're still surrounded by people who do it regularly. Trying to quit drinking while all your friends meet at bars every weekend is an uphill climb. The cues are everywhere, and the subtle pressure to conform is relentless. That's why James suggests a simple but powerful strategy. Join a group where your desired behavior is the normal behavior. And if such a group doesn't exist in your current circle, look for ways to step into new circles, even temporarily, until the habit takes root. The takeaway here isn't to cut off relationships lightly, but to be intentional about which environments you spend the most time in. You can keep old friendships without letting them dictate your habits. If you want to change, let your strongest influences be people whose habits match the identity you're building. Culture is a powerful force. It can drag you backward or pull you forward. The good news is you have a choice about which current you swim in. In the next chapter, James will show how to harness that same tribal pull to keep habits alive even when motivation fades, by tying your behavior to something you care about deeply, your sense of belonging. Chapter 10. How to find and fix the causes of your bad habits. Every bad habit is like a stubborn weed. You can cut it back, trim the leaves, or even pull out of the soil, but if you don't get the root, it will grow back. James Clear reminds us that habits are the same. You can try to force yourself to stop doing something, but unless you understand the cue and craving driving it, the habit will eventually return. The second law taught us that making habits attractive increases the likelihood of sticking with them. But here's the flip side. If you can make a bad habit unattractive, you can weaken its hold over you. That starts with reframing how you think about it. James gives the example of smoking. For many people, cigarettes aren't just about nicotine. They're about stress relief, social bonding, or a moment of pause in a busy day. If you try to quit without addressing these underlying needs, you'll feel like something is missing. But if you reframe smoking as damaging your health, staining your teeth, draining your energy, and stealing your money, the desire loses some of its shine. He calls this reprogramming your brain to see the benefits of avoiding the bad habit. You're not depriving yourself. You're protecting yourself. You're making a choice that aligns with your identity and your long-term well-being. Another approach is to change the association. Let's say you have a habit of checking your phone first thing in the morning. Instead of seeing it as a harmless start to the day, link it mentally to wasted time, delayed focus, and starting your morning on someone else's agenda. The more vividly you connect the habit to negative consequences, the less attractive it becomes. James also points to the role of your social environment. If you're surrounded by people who normalize a bad habit, you'll have a harder time breaking it. That's why removing yourself, even temporarily, from that environment can be so powerful. It's not about cutting people out of your life entirely, but about giving yourself space to weaken the habit's triggers. The real work here is not about resisting the bad habit in the moment. It's about designing your life so the craving never fully takes root. Replace the reward it gives you with something healthier that meets the same need. If you smoke to relax, find a breathing exercise or short walk that gives you that calm. If you eat junk food to escape boredom, keep a list of engaging activities nearby. Ultimately, bad habits aren't broken by willpower alone. They're replaced by better ones. And the change sticks because you've made the old habit unattractive, inconvenient, and disconnected from your identity. With this, we close the second law: make it attractive. You've learned how to shape your cravings, use your social environment to your advantage, and strip the appeal from bad habits so they fade over time. In the next section, we'll open the third law: make it easy, and see how reducing friction can turn good habits into second nature. The third law: make it easy. We tend to think success is about massive effort and iron discipline. But James Clear shows us that the real key is much simpler: make the right thing the easy thing. The human brain is wired to choose the path of least resistance. If a habit is convenient, we're far more likely to do it. If it's complicated or exhausting to start, even the best intentions will fade. The third law, make it easy, is about removing friction from good habits and adding friction to bad ones. It's about starting small, lowering the barrier to action, and making it so simple to begin that you can't find a reason not to. Over the next chapters, James will show how to set up your environment and routines so progress happens almost automatically until the habit becomes second nature. Chapter 11. Walk slowly, but never backward. We live in a world obsessed with speed. Quick results, instant feedback, overnight transformations. If progress isn't immediate, something must be wrong. James Clear turns that idea on its head. The real secret to lasting change is not speed, it's consistency. To make the point, he shares a famous exercise from a photography class. On the first day, the professor splits the room in two. The left side will be graded purely on quantity. Take 100 photographs by the end of the term and you earn an A. Fewer photos, lower grade. The right side will be graded on quality. Turn in a single, perfect image and you earn the top mark. All semester, the quantity group shoots, develops, adjusts, and shoots again. They experiment with light, try odd angles, swap lenses. When the term ends, something surprising happens. The best photographs come from the quantity group. Chasing perfection kept the quality group from practicing. Constant practice gave the quantity group the skill to create quality. In other words, repetition beat refinement. That's the heart of this chapter. Habits form through frequency, not intensity. You don't become a runner by doing a single heroic workout. You become a runner by lacing up day after day, even if some runs are short and slow. Each repetition lays another brick. Over time, a wall appears, sturdy, dependable, and built to last. This is why starting small matters so much. When the first step is tiny, you remove the mental friction that keeps you stuck. Open the notebook and write one sentence. Unroll the yoga mat and hold one pose. Read one page. These small entries are not trivial. They're votes for your future identity, and, more importantly, they're easy enough to repeat tomorrow. James makes a subtle distinction that saves a lot of frustration. Focus on getting the first correct repetition, not the perfect session, not the ideal program. The first clean rep that proves to your brain, this is who I am now. Once that groove is cut, returning to it gets easier. Repetition carves channels in your mind. Water follows the channel. Another reason to favor consistency over intensity is simple physics, lowering activation energy. If a habit requires elaborate preparation, you'll negotiate with yourself and postpone. But when the next step is obvious and tiny, you slide into action before resistance can build. Lay out your clothes the night before. Keep the guitar on a stand in the living room. Place your running shoes by the door with your keys tucked inside. Each nudge shrinks the distance between intention and action. James also warns against the trap of the perfect start. Waiting for the optimal plan is a clever form of delay. The more you prepare, the more you believe you're making progress. But motion is not the same as action. Action delivers a result, even if the result is small. Motion lets you feel productive while avoiding the risk of doing the real thing. The antidote is gentle, repeatable starts that you can't talk yourself out of. None of this means you can't challenge yourself later. Intensity has its place. What James argues is that intensity is fragile. Consistency is durable. Life's chaos, travel, deadlines, illness will knock big plans off course. But a small, repeatable version of the habit survives turbulence. Walk slowly, but never backward. On days when you can't do the full workout, do a warm-up. When you can't write 1,000 words, write a paragraph. Keep the chain intact. Seen this way, success is a byproduct of a system that favors starting. The question becomes, what is the smallest reliable version of this habit I can execute today? Do that, and let repetition do its quiet work. Skills sharpen. Identity hardens. Results accumulate. The promise of the third law, make it easy, is not that you'll coast without effort. It's that you'll stop wasting effort fighting the start. Make the start simple and repeatable, and compounding will take care of the rest. In the next chapter, James reveals why our brains seek the path of least resistance and how to design your environment so the easy path is the right path every single day. Chapter 12. The Law of Least Effort. Humans are wired to conserve energy. Long ago, moving less meant burning fewer calories, which could be the difference between life and death. That ancient wiring is still with us. Today, it quietly steers our choices toward whatever feels easiest in the moment. James Clear calls this the law of least effort. When two options are available, we naturally drift to the one that requires the least work. If your couch is closer than your treadmill, the couch wins. If cookies sit on the counter while fruit hides in the crisper, cookies win. The path of least resistance is the path most people take. That rule can sabotage you or serve you. If you lower friction for the habit you want and raise friction for the habit you do not want, behavior shifts with surprisingly little willpower. James shares a simple example from television. In the early days, changing the channel required getting up, walking to the set, and turning a dial. Because switching was a hassle, most people stuck with whatever was already playing. When the remote control arrived, friction disappeared. Channel surfing exploded, not because our preferences changed, but because the action was now effortless. Small frictions have big effects. Translate that truth to daily life. If the guitar is on a stand in the living room, you will pick it up more. If it is zipped in a case under the bed, days go by without practice. If your running shoes are next to the door with your keys tucked inside, a walk after work becomes the default. If the shoes live in the back of a closet, even a short run becomes easy to skip. The behavior that requires the fewest steps wins. Friction is not only physical, it is also mental. Every extra decision is a speed bump. When a habit demands planning and choice before you even begin, your brain starts negotiating. Later, tomorrow, next week. This is why preparation matters so much. Lay out clothes at night. Put a water bottle on your desk. Pre-cut vegetables, so a healthy snack is the quickest option. By shrinking the number of decisions, you make action automatic. Convenience is a powerful sculptor of behavior. Companies know this. One-click ordering removes hesitation for shoppers. Food apps preload your favorites, so reordering takes seconds. The easier an action becomes, the more often it happens. You can borrow the same psychology for your own habits. A practical way to apply the law of least effort is to map the steps between you and the habit. Then remove or shorten as many steps as possible. Want to read more? Keep a book on the pillow, so you must move it before sleeping. Want to study a language? Keep the app on the home screen and open it while the coffee brews. Want to stretch in the evening? Place the mat on the floor before dinner, so it is waiting when you walk back in. The inverse is just as important. Add steps to habits you're trying to avoid. Put the TV remote in another room. Log out of social media after each use. Store junk food on a high shelf, wrapped and out of sight. Unplug the game console and coil the cables. None of these changes ban the behavior. They make the alternative easier, which is often enough to tip the scales. You can also reduce friction by simplifying the version of the habit you attempt. If you try to complete the perfect workout, the barrier feels high. If you aim to do one set of push-ups or take a 10-minute walk, the barrier shrinks. A small version performed today beats a large version delayed for months. Repetition builds skill and identity. Intensity can wait. The law of least effort connects to a larger theme in this part of the book. Makes starting easy. Once motion begins, momentum carries you forward. That is why small rearrangements of your space work so well. Leaving the notebook open on the table pulls you to write. Setting the instrument on a stand pulls you to practice. Placing fresh fruit in a large bowl on the counter pulls you to eat it. Designed so the right action is the default action. This approach is not laziness. It is strategy. By respecting how the brain prefers the simplest route, you stop wasting energy fighting uphill battles and start using the slope to your advantage. Your environment begins to do the heavy lifting. Each tiny reduction in friction is like smoothing a rough path. You may not notice the change on any single day, but over weeks the road becomes easy to travel. The question to ask yourself is simple. What is the easiest version of this habit that I can make automatic in my current space? Answer with concrete changes you can see, objects moved, steps removed, decisions settled in advance. Align the layout of your home, your desk, and your digital tools with the identity you're building. The chapter closes with a promise that sets up what comes next. If you can make the first 2 minutes of any habit frictionless, you will start far more often, and starting is the gateway to everything that follows. In the next chapter, we will turn that idea into a rule you can apply to any behavior you want to build, the 2-minute rule. Chapter 13. The 2-minute rule. When you start a new habit, the biggest hurdle isn't finishing, it's starting. James Clear understands this deeply, which is why he offers one of the simplest yet most powerful tools in the book, the 2-minute rule. The idea is straightforward. When you begin a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to do. That's it. It might sound overly simplistic, even silly. How can 2 minutes make a difference in building a long-term habit? But this rule is not about doing the habit in full. It's about making the first step so small and easy that you can't talk yourself out of it. Want to read more? Open a book and read 1 page. Want to run every morning? Put on your running shoes. Want to eat healthier? Chop 1 piece of fruit. Want to meditate? Sit on the cushion for just 2 minutes. This is about mastering the art of showing up. Too often, we set the bar so high at the start that it becomes intimidating. We imagine the perfect version of the habit, the 10-kilometer run, the hour-long gym session, the flawless home-cooked dinner, and that vision becomes so overwhelming that we don't even begin. The 2-minute rule lowers that barrier to almost nothing. It flips the mental conversation from, I don't have time, to of course I can do that. And once you start, Momentum often carries you much further. Sitting down to read one page often leads to 10. Putting on your running shoes often leads to stepping outside and maybe running a mile. James uses the phrase gateway habit to describe this phenomenon. The first 2 minutes are like opening the door. You may not walk through every time, but the door stays unlocked. Over time, that small action becomes a ritual that signals to your brain, this is what we do now. This rule also works because it focuses on identity, not outcomes. You may not become fit by putting on your shoes alone, but each time you do it, you're reinforcing the identity of, I am the kind of person who prepares to run. You may not master meditation in 2 minutes, but you're proving to yourself, I am someone who meditates. The trap to avoid is mistaking the gateway for the goal. The 2-minute rule is a starting point. It's not the finish line. You don't stop at one push-up forever. But by starting so small, you create a habit scaffold you can build on. Once it's automatic, you can expand naturally without friction. It's also a powerful tool for breaking bad habits. If you can make the first 2 minutes of a bad habit more difficult, adding friction instead of removing it, you're less likely to do it. If your goal is to watch less TV, unplug the device after each use. If you want to check your phone less, leave it in another room when you work. Those first 2 minutes of extra effort can be enough to make you skip it entirely. The deeper truth here is that habits are rituals before their results. The first 2 minutes are the ritual, the part that comes before the hard work. And rituals are easier to stick with than outcomes. By focusing on just the beginning, you sidestep perfectionism, overthinking, and procrastination. In the next chapter, James will explain why standardizing your habits before optimizing them is the fastest way to make progress, and how consistency lays the foundation for mastery. Chapter 14. How to make good habits inevitable and bad habits impossible. Some habits seem to stick with almost no effort, while others slip away no matter how hard we try. James Clear's answer is simple. Don't rely on willpower alone. Change the game so the good habit becomes the default and the bad habit is nearly impossible to do. The tool for this is a commitment device, a choice you make now that binds your future behavior. Think of it as placing guardrails on the road ahead. You reduce the number of decisions your future self can make in the heat of the moment, when cravings and convenience tend to win. Clear points to an old story with a timeless lesson, the Ulysses Pact. Knowing that the siren song would overpower any sailor's will, Ulysses had his crew tie him to the mast and fill their ears with wax. He didn't plan to be stronger later. He arranged to be constrained later. That's the essence of pre-commitment. Set conditions today that protect you from tomorrow's temptations. We do modern versions of this all the time when we design environments that lock in the right move. Pay for a workout class in advance, so skipping feels costly. Ask a friend to meet you at the gym, so flaking means letting someone down. Schedule a weekly produce delivery, so fresh food shows up without another decision. Set a recurring transfer, so a slice of each paycheck goes straight to savings before you ever see it. Each move shrinks choice and expands consistency. Victor Hugo used a dramatic commitment device to finish The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Faced with a hard deadline and constant distractions, he packed away his going-out clothes and kept only a heavy shawl. Dressing to socialize was no longer an option. The constraint forced the work. You don't need a shawl, but the principle travels. Remove the path to the old behavior, and the new one becomes inevitable. Just as you can make good habits automatic, you can make bad habits impractical. Increase friction. Delete social apps from your phone, so checking them requires a desktop login. Keep the TV unplugged and the remote in a drawer. Store sweets in a hard-to-reach place, wrapped and out of sight. Turn on website blockers during work hours. Keep your phone charging in another room at night. None of these ban the behavior outright. They make the wrong choice slower than the right one, which is usually enough to tip the scales. James Clear also highlights the power of one-time actions that pay you back for years with almost no maintenance. Install a password manager and two-factor authentication so unsafe logins disappear. Set up automatic bill pay and savings so money habits run in the background. Buy a water filter and a large bottle for your desk, so hydration requires no thought. Place motion sensor lights on the porch, so safety is automatic. Replace the all-you-can scroll home screen with a clean layout that shows only the essential tools. These are small setup moves that remove decision fatigue every day. Pre-commitment can be social as well. Tell a colleague you'll send a draft by Friday. Sign up to present at a meetup next month, so practice sessions have a non-negotiable date. Leave your calendar public at work so skipped focus blocks are visible. When the cost of breaking the habit is public or financial, persistence rises. What makes commitment devices so powerful is that they bypass the fragile parts of motivation. In the moment, feelings sway easily. I'm tired. I deserve a treat. I'll start tomorrow. A pre-committed environment doesn't ask how you feel. It funnels you toward the action you chose when you were clear-headed. It shrinks the gap between intention and execution until there's barely any room for negotiation. A useful exercise from this chapter is to list the steps between you and the habit you want. Then remove as many steps as possible. Do the same for a habit you're trying to avoid, but in reverse. Add steps. If reading at night is the goal, place a book on your pillow each morning so you must pick it up before sleeping. If late-night screens are the problem, plug the charger in the kitchen and leave the bedroom dark and device-free. Make the design do the deciding. By the end of the third law, a pattern is clear. Reduce friction and pre-commit. Standardize the start with tiny, reliable actions. Use one-time choices to automate good behavior. Make the right path the easy path and the wrong path the long path. When the structure is set, effort shifts from willpower to follow-through, and follow-through becomes the natural outcome of the system you built. This chapter closes the third law. Make it easy. You now have the tools to lower the barrier to starting. Use the 2-minute rule to open the door and anchor your life with commitment devices and one-time actions so good habits are automatic and bad habits lose oxygen. Next, we step into the fourth law, make it satisfying, where James Clear shows why immediate rewards are the key to making a habit stick for the long term, and how to design feedback so it feels good to keep going. The fourth law, make it satisfying. Think back to the habits that stuck with you the longest. Chances are they didn't just feel useful, they felt good. That's because our brains are wired for immediate rewards. What gets rewarded gets repeated. What feels unsatisfying tends to fade away. This is the heart of the fourth law. Make it satisfying. If the cue triggers the craving, and the craving drives the response, then the reward is what locks the loop in place. When a habit delivers a satisfying payoff, your brain learns this is worth remembering. The challenge is that many of the habits we want to build, saving money, exercising, eating well, come with rewards that are delayed. You don't get stronger after one workout or rich after one savings deposit. On the other hand, many bad habits feel great instantly. The cookie tastes good now, the social media scroll feels good now, the impulse purchase delivers a thrill now. To even the playing field, James Clear shows us how to add satisfaction to good habits and how to make bad habits feel less rewarding in the moment. This isn't about tricking yourself. It's about using the brain's own wiring to make progress more attractive, consistent, and lasting. In the next chapters, we'll explore why reinforcement matters so much, how to add immediate enjoyment to habits you want to keep, and how to use accountability and feedback to make success inevitable. Chapter 15. The Cardinal Rule of Behavior Change. Through the first 3 laws, you've learned how to spot a habit, desire it, and get it started. The 4th law answers a deeper question. Why do some habits stick? The rule is simple. What is rewarded gets repeated, and what is punished gets avoided. The problem is timing. We live in a modern, delayed return world, but our brains were shaped in an immediate return world. For most of human history, actions produced quick consequences. If you foraged well, you ate. If you misstepped, you got hurt. Today, many of the habits that matter most pay off later. Saving for retirement, lifting weights, studying, sleeping on time. Meanwhile, many temptations feel great right now and only cost us later. Scrolling, snacking, skipping the workout. That mismatch explains a lot of self-sabotage. We choose the cookie over the salad, not because we're foolish, but because the cookie delivers a reward immediately while the salad's reward is delayed. The present moment wins the vote unless we deliberately rebalance the scales. So the task in this law is simple to state and powerful in practice. Make good habits immediately satisfying and make bad habits immediately unsatisfying. Positive reinforcement is the simplest place to start. Add a small, instant reward to the behavior you want to repeat. Enjoy your favorite tea when you sit down to write. Put a check mark on a wall calendar the moment you finish a workout. Transfer 5 pounds into a fun fund every time you cook at home. The action becomes associated with a feeling you like, and your brain learns, do this again. You can also change how a habit feels in the moment. Use nicer tools, better music, a brighter space. If reading at night is your goal, make the lamplight warm and the chair comfortable. If you want to stretch, cue a playlist you genuinely enjoy. The smoother the experience, the more your brain tags it as rewarding. On the other side of the ledger, add a small cost to behaviors you want to avoid. Move social apps off your phone, so checking requires a login on a computer. Keep the TV unplugged, so watching means getting up to set it up. Tell a friend you'll send them a brief note when you don't buy takeout this week. If you do cave, you owe the group coffee. These aren't harsh punishments. They simply tilt the present moment in the direction you actually want to go. James also explains why emotions glue habits in place. When a behavior ends with a positive feeling, it becomes more automatic the next time. When it ends with even a slight sting, it loses strength. The lesson is not to wait for far-off outcomes to teach the brain. Give the brain a reason now. There's another benefit to immediate rewards. They protect your identity while results are still invisible. In the first weeks of a new routine, the scale may not move and the bank balance may not grow. But each time you mark a clean X on the calendar, you feel a hit of satisfaction that says, I'm the kind of person who shows up. That feeling keeps you engaged long enough for the long-term rewards to arrive. The danger, of course, is choosing rewards that conflict with the habit itself. Running a mile and celebrating with a cupcake, or finishing a study session and rewarding yourself with hours of distraction. The fix is to choose reinforcements that align with the identity you're building. After a workout, enjoy a hot shower and a quiet walk home. After writing, brew the good coffee and read a few inspiring pages. The reward should complete the loop, not cancel it. This chapter lays the foundation for 2 practical tools you'll meet next. First, habit tracking, a visual cue that turns progress into its own reward and makes momentum easy to see. Second, accountability, a social form of immediate feedback that adds just enough friction to keep you honest when motivation dips. The essence is simple: bring the reward forward. Let the good habit feel good now, and let the bad habit carry a small price now. When you do, repetition becomes natural, and repetition is the mother of mastery. In the next chapter, we'll turn satisfaction into a visible signal you can't ignore, a mark you'll come to crave, so sticking with your habits feels as good as achieving them. Chapter 16. How to stick with good habits every day. One of the biggest struggles with habits isn't starting, it's continuing. The excitement of a new resolution fades. Motivation dips. Life crowds in. The question is simple but urgent. How do you keep showing up when the novelty is gone? James Clear's answer is habit tracking, a simple, visible way to make your progress satisfying in the moment. If the cardinal rule is that what's rewarded is repeated, then tracking your habits provides that instant hit of satisfaction. Each mark, each tally, each check becomes its own small reward. Consider the humble calendar. In the early 1980s, comedian Jerry Seinfeld used a big wall calendar and a red marker. His goal was to write jokes every day. Each time he wrote, he put a red X on the date. Soon, the real goal wasn't just write jokes. It was don't break the chain. The growing line of red marks was satisfying, motivating, and almost addictive in the best sense. This is the power of habit tracking. It transforms invisible progress into visible evidence. When you place a check mark after exercising, or log another day of reading, or record a healthy meal, you reinforce the identity of someone who shows up. You can literally see your consistency. Why does this matter so much? Because early results are often invisible. In the first weeks of saving money, your account barely moves. In the first weeks of lifting weights, your body looks the same. Without reinforcement, it's easy to quit. But when you track, you get immediate satisfaction, a clear signal that today mattered. James emphasizes that tracking doesn't need to be fancy. A notebook, a wall calendar, a simple app, even a jar where you drop a coin each time you complete the habit, all work. The method matters less than the feedback. Did I do it today or not? Habit tracking also turns success into a game. Each check mark becomes a little win. Momentum builds, and you start craving that feeling of keeping the streak alive. Over time, the streak becomes more valuable than the individual effort. Missing one day feels costly because it breaks the chain. Of course, the reality is that life happens, and you will miss sometimes. James has a powerful principle for this: never miss twice. Missing once is an accident, but missing twice is the start of a new habit. If you slip, get back on track immediately. The longer you wait, the harder it is to restart. Another benefit of tracking is honesty. It's easy to tell ourselves we're doing pretty well, but the calendar or journal doesn't lie. Either the mark is there or it isn't. That honesty builds self-awareness and keeps you grounded in reality rather than excuses. Finally, James reminds us that tracking is a tool, not a prison. If the act of recording starts to feel obsessive or heavy, simplify. The point isn't to track forever. It's to use tracking until the habit becomes automatic. Once brushing your teeth, writing, or exercising is ingrained, you won't need marks on a page to remind you. Habit tracking works because it delivers the one thing every brain craves: a sign of progress. And when progress is visible, it's satisfying. Satisfaction fuels repetition. Repetition builds mastery. With this tool, you'll no longer rely on bursts of motivation or long-term promises. You'll have a daily, tangible reminder that every action counts, and that consistency, not intensity, wins. In the next chapter, we'll add one more ingredient: the power of accountability. You'll see how making your habits public, or partnering with someone else, can create social rewards and social pressure strong enough to carry you through the hardest days. Chapter 17: How an accountability partner can change everything. There's a reason why it's easier to show up when someone else is counting on you. Deadlines are easier to meet when a boss or a client is waiting. Workouts are easier to complete when a friend is at the gym. The presence of another person transforms effort from optional to expected. This is the essence of accountability. James Clear argues that if satisfaction locks in a habit, then social accountability supercharges it. We are social creatures. Praise feels good. Embarrassment stings. Approval and disapproval from others are some of the strongest forces shaping behavior. Consider how organizations use this principle. A job comes with performance reviews. Sports teams come with teammates who notice when you skip practice. Even support groups like Alcoholics Anonymous rely on public accountability. Members don't just rely on willpower, They lean on community. James shares the story of a man named Brian Harris who wanted to quit smoking. He made a simple but brutal contract with two friends. Every time he lit a cigarette, he had to pay them $50. The stakes were clear, the witnesses were real, and the cost of failure was painful. Within weeks, the habit that had resisted willpower for years began to crumble. This is the power of what James calls an accountability contract. You make a written or verbal agreement with someone else about the habit you want to build or break. You outline the behavior, the frequency, and the consequence if you fail. Suddenly, the habit isn't just about you. It's about your reputation, your word, your integrity. Why does this work so well? Because humans are wired to care deeply about how others see us. We don't want to look weak, unreliable, or dishonest. Losing face in front of others often feels worse than the physical effort of sticking with the habit. That social pressure becomes fuel. And accountability doesn't have to be harsh. Sometimes it's enough just to have someone check in. Share your weekly goals with a partner. Send a daily message when you complete the workout or writing session. Report progress to a small group chat. Even light social visibility can keep you consistent. James emphasizes that this approach is especially powerful when combined with habit tracking. Imagine marking your calendar and sending proof to a partner. The streak feels good privately, and the recognition feels good socially. Satisfaction doubles. Of course, the best accountability partner is someone you respect, not someone who will let you slide. A close friend, a mentor, or a peer who's working on similar goals can keep the standard high while still cheering you on. The real magic is that accountability shifts the frame. A habit is no longer just a private battle of willpower. It's a public declaration. You're not only the person who works out, writes, or saves. You're the person who keeps your word. That identity is powerful, sticky, and deeply satisfying. With this, James concludes the fourth law: make it satisfying. You've learned why immediate rewards are crucial, how habit tracking makes progress visible, and how accountability adds social reinforcement. Together, these tools give your habits the best chance of lasting for a lifetime. But the book isn't finished. Beyond the four laws lies a deeper question. How do all these small habits compound into real, lasting transformation? In the final section, James shows us how habits scale into mastery and how tiny gains, multiplied by time, create extraordinary results. Advanced tactics. How to go from being merely good to being truly great. By now, you've walked through the four laws of behavior change. Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. Together, they give you a system for building habits that last, a framework you can return to for almost any goal in life. But James Clear doesn't stop there. Habits are not only about building routines or breaking bad patterns. They are about mastery, the difference between being good and being great. This is where the small, quiet power of habits reveals its sharpest edge. In this final section, James explores how tiny improvements compound into extraordinary results, how to sustain progress when motivation fades, how to balance consistency with creativity, and how to avoid the hidden pitfalls that can come once habits are established. This is the truth about mastery. It isn't a flash of brilliance or a burst of inspiration. It's the slow, steady layering of small habits, refined over time, until excellence feels effortless. In the chapters ahead, you'll see how to maximize the four laws you've already learned, how to push beyond plateaus, and how to think about habits not just as daily choices, but as a philosophy of living. Chapter 18. The truth about talent, when genes matter and when they don't. Talent often feels like an invisible hand guiding some people to greatness while leaving others behind. We see a gifted musician play as if the piano were an extension of his soul, or an athlete move with effortless precision, and we assume They were simply born that way. But James Clear challenges this idea. Yes, genetics matter. They shape our bodies, influence our temperaments, and even nudge us towards certain abilities. But genes are not the final story. They only set the boundaries of possibility. Within those boundaries, habits decide how far you go. To illustrate this, consider the Olympic Games. Walk through the athletes and you notice patterns. Swimmers with long torsos and hyperflexible ankles, sprinters with explosive muscle fibers and compact frames, gymnasts with shorter builds and incredible balance. Their bodies give them leverage. But leverage is not victory. Each athlete spends years, even decades, shaping their talent through relentless routines. Morning practices, deliberate drills, careful recovery, habits built day by day. Genes provide the potential. Habits convert that potential into results. This is the heart of James's argument. Effort multiplies when you are in the right arena. When your habits align with your natural gifts, practice feels smoother, progress comes faster, and motivation lasts longer. When you are mismatched, every step feels like resistance. The path to mastery begins with a crucial choice: selecting the right game to play. Habits cannot be separated from context. A person wired to love patterns and details may find joy in programming or chess. Someone energized by connection and persuasion may thrive in sales or teaching. A person who delights in order and structure might flourish in accounting, architecture, or system design. In these cases, habits don't feel forced. They feel like natural extensions of identity. James suggests 3 simple tests to discover alignment. 1. Does this activity give me energy rather than drain me? 2. Do I lose track of time while doing it? 3. Does success in this area feel deeply meaningful, not just impressive to others? A yes is a signal you are playing in the right field, one where habits will take root and grow stronger. Still, this doesn't mean biology cages you. A 5'2" person will not become an NBA center, but that same person could dominate gymnastics, martial arts, or coaching. Every field contains areas where different traits matter. By designing habits that fit your edge, you create what James calls a compounding advantage. Over time, this advantage can outweigh raw talent misapplied elsewhere. This is why James states, genes load the dice, but habits play the game. Natural ability might decide the opening, but repeated behavior decides the outcome. The child with natural intelligence but poor study habits will fall behind the average student who studies consistently. The athlete with promise but poor discipline will fade, while the steady grinder rises. Over years, habits often outshine raw gifts. Research in music underscores this truth. Studies of elite violinists and pianists reveal that those at the very top are rarely just born prodigies. Instead, they discovered early joy in deliberate practice. They practiced more consistently, with more focus, and over longer spans of time. Talent opened the door, but habit carried them through it again and again. This chapter reframes talent from a mystery into something practical. It's not about asking, am I talented enough? But instead, where can my nature and my habits combine to create the greatest return? By designing life around strengths, you transform practice from a grind into a flow. Instead of pushing endlessly against resistance, you move with the current of who you are. And yet, James makes clear that even in the right lane, challenges remain. Progress never climbs in a straight line. Everyone eventually encounters plateaus, where improvement slows and enthusiasm dips. The real test of mastery isn't just finding your natural fit. It's learning how to stay engaged when the work becomes demanding. That is where the next principle, the Goldilocks rule, becomes invaluable. In the following chapter, we'll discover how to stay motivated by keeping challenges in that sweet spot. Not too easy, not too hard, but just right. It's the key to staying committed long enough for talent and habit together to transform you from good to great. Chapter 19. The Goldilocks Rule: how to stay motivated in life and work. Motivation is easy to find on day one. New routines sparkle with possibility. Then the shine fades. Schedules get crowded. The body feels heavy. The mind looks for an exit. The question becomes, how do you keep showing up when the novelty is gone? James Clear's answer is the Goldilocks rule. The principle is simple and powerful. We stay most engaged when the task is just beyond our current ability. Not too easy, not too hard, but just right. Too easy and we get bored. Too hard and we get discouraged. In the sweet spot, effort feels meaningful because success is within reach, but not guaranteed. That edge keeps attention locked in. Think about practice among high performers. A tennis player hits with someone slightly better, enough to stretch their reactions, not enough to break their spirit. A musician works a passage that requires focus and finesse, but is playable with concentrated effort. A programmer takes on a problem whose solution is visible but not trivial. In each case, the challenge is calibrated. It asks for growth without demanding miracles. Psychologists call this balance flow. In flow, time thins out. The mind quiets and narrows to the task. You're challenged but not overwhelmed, fully absorbed, yet not frantic. Habits become deeply satisfying in this zone because every repetition produces a trace of progress you can feel. But even with perfect calibration, boredom arrives. James makes a crucial point. Professionals don't succeed because they avoid boredom. They succeed because they keep working through it. They show up when motivation is neutral. They do the basic reps even when inspiration is taking a day off. The difference is not passion in every moment. The difference is reliability. This is where habits earn their keep. Willpower surges and crashes. Systems are steady. When the start of a session is standardized, the shoes by the door, the notebook on the table, the app open and ready, you glide past hesitation and into motion. Once you're moving, the Goldilocks zone becomes reachable again. James offers a practical way to stay in the sweet spot. Dial the difficulty. If a workout routine feels dull, add a small progression, one more set, a little more weight, a slightly faster pace. If reading feels rote, raise the quality of the material or set a micro goal for depth, not speed. If journaling feels flat, give yourself a better question to answer. The goal isn't to punish yourself. It's to keep tasks landing just beyond your edge. Feedback loops matter here. Immediate, honest signals keep motivation alive. Track a metric that matches your stage. Minutes practiced, pages drafted, sessions completed, weight lifted with clean form. When the numbers inch forward, your brain registers a win. When they stall, you know it's time to tweak the challenge. James also addresses a sneaky trap, the valley after visible progress. Early in a new habit, gains arrive quickly because you're learning obvious skills. Then the curve flattens. Improvement still happens, but it hides. This is where many people quit. The cure is to respect the rhythm. Stay consistent, then nudge difficulty upward in tiny increments. The plateau is not a verdict. It's an invitation to refine. Another tactic is to rotate focus while staying inside the same habit. A runner alternates between easy miles, hill work, and short sprints. A writer cycles through drafting, revising, and idea collecting. A coder shifts between building features, refactoring, and writing tests. Variety keeps interest alive without changing the identity of the work. And remember the principle from earlier chapters: never miss twice. If a day slips, you don't owe a perfect comeback. You owe a return. The streak is precious not because it proves excellence, but because it preserves momentum. Once momentum is alive, the Goldilocks zone is easier to reach. You're already moving. James adds a hard-won truth. Mastery is often mundane. It is not a parade of breakthroughs. It's a procession of well-executed basics. Professionals stick to the schedule. They reduce the startup friction. They keep the work slightly challenging, relentlessly repeatable, and visible to themselves. Glamour shows up later, if at all. To apply this chapter today, pick one habit and adjust it by 5%. Add a single, slightly harder variation to the workout. Ask a sharper question in tonight's journal. Read one level up from your usual material. If it feels impossible, you've overshot, scale back. If it feels dull, you've undershot, scale up. You are tuning the dial, not flipping a switch. The Goldilocks rule explains why we can love the work on Monday and loathe it on Thursday. The work hasn't changed. The match between the task and your skill has. Bring them back into alignment and motivation returns, not as fireworks, but as a steady pull to keep going. With that, James turns to a final caution. The very routines that make you successful can, over time, make you rigid. You can become so good at what you do that you stop noticing where you're stuck. Comfort becomes a glass ceiling. In the next chapter, he shows the downside of creating good habits and how to keep your systems flexible so you don't get trapped by your own success. Chapter 20. The downside of creating good habits. Habits are powerful. They make life smoother, faster, more predictable. But what happens when that predictability begins to work against you? In this chapter, James clearly issues a warning. The same routines that free your mind can also blind it. Habits are double-edged swords. They automate success, but they can also lock you into patterns that stop you from growing. Consider the athlete who becomes dominant by practicing one style of play. At first, this narrow focus gives them an advantage. But as the years pass, opponents study their moves. What once brought victory now makes them predictable. The strength of the habit has turned into a weakness. The same is true for companies that grow through one innovation and then cling to it, long after the market has shifted. Habits can create mastery, but mastery can calcify into stagnation. James calls this the danger of automaticity. When behaviors become too automatic, you stop paying attention. You lose flexibility. You keep acting the same way, even when the world has changed around you. It feels comfortable, but it quietly erodes your edge. The antidote is deliberate reflection. While habits keep you moving, reflection keeps you aligned. The best performers do not only practice automatically, they also pause to evaluate. They review their systems. They ask, is this still working? Does this still serve my goals? James offers two practical tools. The first is the annual review. Once a year, he looks back at the past 12 months. He counts the articles written, the workouts logged, the books read. He asks himself, what went well? What didn't? What lessons should I carry forward? This ritual turns hindsight into foresight. The second is the integrity report. Conducted in the summer, it asks 3 questions. What are the core values that drive me? Am I living in alignment with them? Where can I improve? This report ensures that habits don't only make you efficient, but also keep you true to your deeper principles. Without this check, it's easy to drift into becoming a well-trained machine who no longer feels human purpose. To make this concrete, imagine 2 writers. The first writes every day, but never reflects. After years, their words grow repetitive. They have mastered consistency, but lost originality. The second also writes every day, but reviews their work monthly. They notice patterns, challenge assumptions, and refine their voice. Both have habits, but only one grows. Conclusion. The secret to results that last. After 20 chapters, the message of Atomic Habits narrows to a single, quiet truth. True change is not about a single goal, a single burst of discipline, or a single lucky break. It is about the slow, almost invisible layering of habits, one on top of another, until they build a life that feels completely transformed. James Clear reminds us that the point of habits is not to win one race, but to stay in the game long enough for time to magnify your effort. Goals are momentary. Systems endure. Habits are the invisible architecture of daily life, and when built correctly, they make results inevitable. The secret to results that last is not radical transformation, but relentless continuation. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. If your system is aligned with your values and identity, you will continue to make progress even when motivation fades. James points out that habits are a double gift. They make bad days survivable and good days exceptional. On the worst days, habits keep you afloat, ensuring you don't sink below your baseline. On the best days, they compound your momentum, pushing you further than effort alone ever could. And perhaps the most important shift of all, habits are not about external achievement, but internal alignment. When you cast votes for the kind of person you want to be day after day, the result is not just success, it's integrity. It's the satisfaction of living in harmony with your chosen identity. This is the promise of atomic habits, that small improvements, repeated consistently, create extraordinary change. Not because of one dramatic leap, but because the system never stops working in your favor. And so, as we leave the structured chapters behind, one more step remains: a recap of the most powerful lessons gathered into one place so you can carry them forward. Thank you for listening. You just walked through James Clear's Atomic Habits, a book that proves lasting change is not built in giant leaps, but in steady steps repeated daily. Here are the essentials to carry with you. Tiny habits compound into massive results. Systems are stronger than goals. Identity drives behavior. Every action is a vote for the person you want to be. The 4 laws: make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, make it satisfying. Change isn't about perfection, it's about direction. Miss once, but don't miss twice. Start small, stay consistent, and let time do the heavy lifting. If this journey helped you, please share it, subscribe, and pass it along to someone who's ready for their own quiet transformation. Because greatness is not a single moment, it's a rhythm. And that rhythm begins with one small habit, repeated today.